Hi everyone, and welcome to Mini Lecture 8. Today we'll be discussing composing clear transitions. Before we begin, make sure that you've got a Word document to do some writing on for today's lecture assignment. The purpose and goals for today's lecture will be as follows. First, we'll define the term transitions. Then we'll examine transitions as visual cues to readers. We'll then examine transitions as tools to define relationships among ideas. And finally, we'll explore transitions as a means for organization. So when we think about transitions and what transitions can do for writing, speaking, really any kind of communication in general, there is a common theme. We just see it differently in different types of communication. But essentially, when we look at it in terms of writing, we can explain transitions as words, phrases, or sentence structures used to organize a paper's content. And I mean, you could even apply that definition to speaking as well, because speaking, you can use a certain word to transition from one idea to the next, but you're not writing it, you're saying it. What transitions do then, both in writing and in other forms of communication, is it establishes relationship between various ideas and sources. You can visualize then a transition as a bridge, really from one idea to the next. Transition is a connector of ideas. When we think about transitions as sentence structures, or how we see them in terms of sentence structure, the most obvious way would be through the topic sentence, which serves as the first sentence of each paragraph. Now, this is to introduce the idea of a new paragraph or section in its entirety, and it's usually the first or second sentence. When we think about how to structure a topic sentence and to ensure that it really does serve this transition function, we want to think of it in terms of old information, new information. And what this does is it basically says to your reader, okay, in these previous paragraphs, previous pages, whatever the case may be, this is what I told you. Now, in this new paragraph and going forward from this point, here's what I'm about to tell you and here's what I'm about to explore. So if you follow that old information, new information structure, again, you can see how it's kind of creating that bridge from where the audience once was to where they are and are going to in your writing. So if we look at this example here, now that I've established who benefits from the socialist ideology present in the candidate's speech, it's important to discuss who is othered or whose needs are ignored by the ideology. So by the way that this is set up, as the audience or as the reader, I know, okay, yes, this person is now summarizing what they've already talked about. They're reminding me that they have discussed who benefits from this ideology as expressed in this candidate's speech. That's where we were. Now we're going to jump into the idea of who is othered, so who is not benefiting, who is excluded or marginalized from it. And I know from there on out to expect that the content will reflect, okay, who is othered, who is marginalized by this ideology. So really what we can see here with the topic sentence is your opportunity to say, here's where we've been, here's where we're at, and here's where we're going to go with it. So again, you can start to see how that bridge visualization really can be helpful when thinking about what transitions, especially in the form of topic sentences, can do. Transitions also can be expressed in words or phrases as well. While they can be complete sentences like what we see with the topic sentence, they can also be, again, just a word that happens to be in a paragraph, embedded in the middle or toward the end of a paragraph, or wherever it happens to appear. We typically will use transitions to tie together different ideas. So this can be used to express agreement, similarity, or extension between ideas. Now, this is also useful when you want to strengthen your argument by showing areas of agreement. So if you're going through and you're saying, here's an argument that I would like to propose, and you really want to incorporate forms of support, forms of evidence to say, hey, look, I really do have a good idea, you can use those transition words to make it clear to your audience that there is a positive relationship between what you're saying and what published research has also said on the topic. So when we think about examples of transitions to express agreement, we certainly are not short on words and phrases that we can use. So of course we have not only, but also, similarly. So you could say, similar to what Scholar A said in their research, I too find that we should reduce the cost of textbooks. In addition to what Scholar B has said, I would also like to contribute this thought to the discussion. We also see others equally important, as well as, together with, additionally, furthermore, and like, and the list really does go on. These are just some of the more common ones that you will see in academic writing, and that would be good to start incorporating into your own writing as well, especially as you write argument pieces, or if you are trying to demonstrate that your audience that you've got the right idea, and you do want to say, hey, look, other people have done similar research and pursued similar ideas, and they're coming up with the same stuff I am. These transitions of agreement can really emphasize that connection to your reader and strengthen your argument that much more. So let's look at some examples here. So similar to my observation, so that's our transition word, similar. Dr. Yan agrees that those who engage in online discussions have a difficult time arriving at consensus. In 2014, McDonald's introduced self-service kiosks as an option for customers to place orders. Furthermore, as our transition to express agreement, they also made digital soda fountains available for customers. Equally important, so again, our transition there, to studying consumer recycling techniques would be exploring how companies could redesign their product packaging. So in each instance, we are showing how there is some kind of agreement, some kind of extension between different ideas and different sources. Now let's look at transitions as they can express opposition or disagreement. So this puts thoughts and ideas into conversation with one another. So this is really, rather than just saying, okay, hey, yeah, we agree, transitions that express opposition, again, go beyond that to say, this is really what the relationship is, and this is really what this dialogue, this is what's really going on in this dialogue. Now, they're often used when presenting and discussing opposing ideas, findings, theories, and they're commonly also used when critiquing another's ideas. So this will be important when you're introducing the counter-argument in Project 4, or when you are discussing, opposing ideas or entering into the conversation yourself in Project 2. So the opposition words, even though they are typically associated with expressing disagreement, they also can perform other functions as well that just better determines the relationship among thoughts and ideas beyond simple agreement. So looking at some examples, but instead, conversely, on the other hand, be that as it may, in contrast, nevertheless, regardless, however, although. So you can see here how, yes, a lot of these can very clearly express opposition, but we can also use them to indicate different relationships as well. So let's take a look at a few examples. The researcher argued that her information was valid. However, the age of her data negated the claims she made. Following Betsy DeVos's confirmation hearing, some Americans were very excited for the prospects of her office. On the other hand, other Americans expressed concerns. In contrast to earlier studies, scientists have been able to disprove the link between vaccinations and autism. So again, we can see that these words really do better help us understand what the relationship among different ideas and sources will be. And you can see how there's a bit more of a complexity when expressing opposition. And while that might seem intimidating and challenging, it's kind of where the fun part is at, because it really gives you the opportunity to say, okay, these ideas or these sources, maybe they don't link up 110%, but then you have the opportunity to ask yourself and to say, okay, well, what is the relationship that I see going on between these ideas, between these sources, and how can I phrase them in such a way that the audience will understand this relationship in the way that I do? And transitions that express opposition really can allow you to do that. The final one that we will look at will be transitions to express conclusions. So these are commonly used in topic sentences. So again, the first or second sentence of a paragraph, but this also signals that a thought, in this case your paper, is concluding or that you're wrapping up. Now, this is typical for a final paragraph of a section or of an overall argument. Now, with what we're doing with 2010, even our longer paper, you probably won't develop very long sections if you develop sections at all, but you can use them in longer works to wrap up, let's say you're doing a literature review and then moving on to methodology and then a discussion. You can definitely use these transitions to wrap up individual unique sections. But for the sake of this class, you will probably use them most commonly in your conclusion paragraph for the overall piece. These will probably look familiar. So in summary, ultimately, to summarize, given these points, overall, in conclusion, in the long run, therefore, all things considered, you can see how, regardless of which one you use, they all give the sense of, okay, we are wrapping up. We are about to cease discussion on this topic for the given time, in this case, the paper that you're writing, and now we are about to summarize the points that we've discussed and, give some concluding thoughts. So when we see examples of these, again, these might look familiar to some, some words that you've probably used in the past. So in conclusion, there is a clear connection between the glamorization of gun use in movies and the sales of certain firearms. Because The Big Bang Theory has seen a life of nearly a decade, it ultimately received the appropriate nominations for Lifetime Achievement Awards. Given the information provided above, the city of Hurricane should dedicate more public funds to the development of running trails. So again, you can see how these words indicate to the reader, they serve as a visual cue that, hey, the writer is wrapping up, so I need to put myself as the reader in that mental space where I'm like, okay, I am ready to be done reading this since the author is ready to be done writing on. For the lecture assignment, I would like you to perform the following tasks. First, I'd like you to review your current project materials. So regardless of what project we're on, wherever it is in the drafting process you are, just make sure you have access to those materials. As you go through and you review your drafts, I'd like you to identify 2 places that could benefit from clear transitions. Maybe as you're reviewing your material, you find yourself saying, okay, well, the agreement isn't as clear as I thought it was. Or, yes, I'm kind of hinting that there is opposition here, but this could be improved by more explicitly defining what that opposition looks like. So whatever spots, you find best or that you would like to work with. I'd like you then to revise your text by including the appropriate transition, and the appropriate transition is going to be up to you. So, review the lists that we have discussed in this lecture. Also consult They Say, I Say, our course textbook. And then, you can just Google transition words, and you will come up with a number of academic articles that will provide you some solid examples. So then revise your text by including the appropriate transition or the transitions that you think would be appropriate. And then copy and paste the 2 places you revise, including both the original text and your revised text. So in total, you should have 4 sentences, 2 original and 2 revised with new transitions. All right, everyone, that does it for today's lecture. If you have any questions or if there's content that I can speak to further, please don't hesitate to contact me. All right, everyone, until next time.